Welcome back to Why Blank Lost. I'm David Bloomberg, and I'm about to lead this party of three into a dangerous and exciting tale of adventure filled with monsters who turned on the hero Kane.
Wow.
At my side is my trusted companion, Jessica Lewis.
I don't have a weapon. Am I supposed to have a weapon?
Well, we will see. And I mentioned that we are a party of three.
Slinky.
Okay. Because we have a very special guest, a woman who went through her own adventure just last year. Survivor 43's Lindsay Carmine.
Do you have a weapon, Lindsay?
I'm sorry?
Do you have a weapon? Apparently we needed weapons.
No, but I was listening to an exit interview with Kane, and they said he had the shield but no sword. So, like, I'm sticking with Kane right now. Like, no weapons.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. Apparently Bloomberg has it.
I know. I'm like looking around frantically. I don't have anything. I apologize.
Bloomberg came prepared with a sword.
Yes. And all of my some of my Dungeons and Dragons book behind me.
Okay. Listen. I just need to stop you there for 1 second, because I will say in listening to his exit interviews and reading his exit interviews, I just kept thinking to myself, Bloomberg must be dying right now with the Star Trek and the what is the other was Star Trek, and there was Dungeons and Dragons, but Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. I was like, David Bloomberg just is dying right now. He is just living his best life listening to this.
I was going to wear one of my Star Wars shirts, but it didn't go with the Dungeons and Dragons theme.
Okay.
There is so much stuff behind you.
There is, and that's only part of it. And it's because Survivor has a bit in common with Dungeons and Dragons, as we heard from Kane throughout the season. For example, in both, you can get a bonus for backstabbing someone. D&D.
You seem to be enjoying that too much.
D&D has magic items. Survivor has advantages that magically appear.
Fair.
D&D has a dungeon master who runs the game. Survivor has Jeff Probst. But a major difference is one that Kane mentioned in this episode, although he was a bit off in what he said. In D&D, the players all work together as a group against a common enemy. In Survivor, it's every person for themselves, even if they might appear to be working as a group temporarily.
See, I should have known there was going to be so many quotes that you were going to write down about all of these things.
Yes.
You were just in my brain the whole time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this, of course, leads us to why we're here, which is to discuss why Kane lost. We will compare his game to my rules for winning that I originally wrote way back after season 1 and have been updating ever since. And that's nothing compared to the D&D rule, because this one that I'm holding up is a 6th printing from 1980. And they've been updated quite a bit since then as well.
So there are multiple versions of that book that you just held up for the rules. Okay.
Yeah,
which doesn't surprise me that you would have books full of rules to play games.
Yeah. I mean, you think my rules are long? This is
I was just going to say
player's handbook. This is book 1 of the monster manual.
It looks like a children's novel.
Well, right. Have you had these since 1980, or did you buy them on eBay?
Probably. No. I've had these. Their art department wasn't so great back when they made this one. It did get better. But there's also a Dungeon Master's Guide, and there's all these books behind me here. And this is, I don't even remember what edition this is. I am not up to speed on what the current edition is. I would have to ask Kane about that.
Can't say I've ever read any of those rule books. Just throwing that out there.
Well, now, they're longer. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And they're longer than my rules, And
your rules are very long.
Yeah. Yes. And we'll stick to my rules. We will not be using these rules. This player's handbook will not be used. We'll stick to my player's handbook.
Oh, my goodness.
And you can find my version of the rules at our dedicated page at robhasawebsite.com/yxlostfeed. Click on the link bubble for the Survivor 44 rules.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Lindsay, Since Survivor 43 aired, we've found out that just on your tribe, at least you, Cassidy, and James were all avid Why Blank Lost listeners. So we need to know, did any of you ever bring it up? You could have made the first ever Why Blank Lost alliance and taken
Oh, I love this.
That would have been wonderful. So as much as like you say before you go out there, like, I'm not going to tell anybody that I'm a diehard fan, that I listen to Rob Has a Podcast, Why Blank Lost, all these things. At least my experience was like my ego got in the way. And I think for me, being like the oldest woman out there to play on my tribe, for me, it was like, I was trying to toe the line between like playing kind of laid back, but also letting them know that I knew enough. But when you're sitting out there and you're cutting up coconut and just kind of shooting the breeze, things just kind of like pop out of your mouth. You know, you start to strategize, and then you start to like refer to things you heard on a podcast or things you've seen in previous games or seasons. But let's be honest, like, everybody's a super fan out there at this point.
It seems like
not everybody on your tribe was a super fan.
True. We won't go there, but there's just different levels, right?
Yeah.
And so, but then you also have, like, for me, I've been a fan since day one. And then you've also got people that are younger than me, and they didn't watch it from the very beginning, but they've watched more episodes of seasons than I have, right?
Yeah.
I've kind of seen it all. Like, I'm on Reddit, I'm on Discords, like, you know, I kind of do it all, but there were a lot of people out there that did as well. So, but James, Cassidy, and I were in alliance anyway. So
yeah,
that's true.
Yeah.
It is interesting to see the shift that is happening, because I do think when Survivor started, obviously it was so new and people were just really kind of fans of the idea of the show. Yeah. But then as it continued on throughout the years, it was like fans of the idea of the show and how to play the game and the rules that go along with it. And there's all these like multiple levels to it. So I feel like that's where the super fandom varies. It's like, at what level are you at? Are you just still fans of the show? Are you fans of the show in addition to the strategy and how it's played? And so it's interesting to listen to new players coming in and their backstories with Survivor. And are they a younger person who's now gone back and watched every season 5 times? That's impressive. I've never done that.
No.
But, you know, good for these people that are doing it and studying it. But also it is, I think, a little bit problematic with the effect it's now having on some of the ways the game is played.
I think the biggest compliment somebody can give me in, you know, this area is someone will say like, wow, I thought I was a super fan. You're really a super fan. And I'm like, thanks. Because you do, you know, someone will say like, oh, I've seen every episode of every season. And I'm like,
right.
Oh, is that like how you think you're a super fan? Like,
Yeah.
do you not have any idea that there's this entire community that exists? And, you know, I'm so lucky in the sense that like Survivor just happened to be my favorite show ever. Can you guys think of any other television show or movie that has the coverage and the access to like the behind the scenes, just the strategy aspect of it, but also the aspect of it? Because when I started, I mean, I applied for season 2, but when I started like really applying, when I got the call for David versus Goliath, I was like, I really need to do some background research and figure out like what I'm signing up for. And luckily there was just a wealth of information available to me at the time. And I just kept thinking to myself, like, I'm so lucky that I have like all this information at my fingertips. I can't think of any other show that has that.
Right. You started that early applying with season 2.
Yes.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah. And you got there.
I took a break, but I mean, it was back in the day when like you had to have a VHS cassette and you had to put it in a manila envelope and like send it to LA and hope that it got there. And I had like palm trees decorated on the cover of it. And
my God, that's incredible.
I'm sure everybody did at that time.
Do you have a copy of your original video anywhere?
I don't, because back then, how would you get a copy of it? Right?
Oh, that's a fair point. Yeah.
Like I remember my boyfriend at the time, we went to the Bahamas and we took like one of those big VHS recorders that you have to like put on your shoulder.
Oh yeah, I still have one. I have one of those in the other room, I think.
I love it. So, so we just recorded it, and I had this like all pink ensemble on. I've actually got like I've got pictures of me doing it. But I sent it out, and then I just stopped for a really long time, and then
oh my gosh,
I kind of picked back up, and I think I sent in my video in 2016, and then I went to finals for like David versus Goliath, and then season 38. So, and I went to LA twice that casting cycle.
Oh
so
my God.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
That's crazy. Very interesting. All right. Now I'm seeing some of the, I see more of the connections now.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then I was cut like, I think 6 weeks. So I made it all the way to like the echocardiogram. I had already quit my job. And then,
oh no.
Yeah, and they said they just couldn't figure out whether I was a David or a Goliath, which I understand. And then that's when Reem and Natalie Cole took those spots. I was at finals with them. And then we took like a pause for a little bit. And then I was a COVID nurse. So I was taking care of COVID patients for a couple of years. And then during my time of like taking care of COVID patients, I then applied in the 41-42 cycle. I got cast for 42. I got cut 12 hours before we were supposed to leave because I got COVID. Even though I was living in a hotel room at the time, I went and left my family and lived in a hotel room for like 10 days to prevent myself from getting COVID. I did not leave that hotel room. I somehow got COVID. And then I got cast for 43.
That had to have been so crushing.
It was the most I don't want to say like the most heartbreaking thing, because taking care of COVID patients, like that was honestly the most heartbreaking thing I've ever done. Just having to deal with the amount of deaths that I had to deal with on a daily basis.
Oh God, I'm so sorry.
Thank you. All that to say, everything worked out, and luckily, the only downside is that going through 43, I had to go through the entire casting process all over again.
Oof.
Oh my God.
So,
they can't cut you any slack.
No, but I think just so much had happened in a year, and I think the only thing that I'm disappointed with is if I had been cast on 42, I think my story and me representing nurses and healthcare providers would have been just more obvious. I think by the time 43 was airing, like people were just tired of hearing about COVID. And so unfortunately, like I said, I was so excited to represent healthcare workers and like share our story with the world. So like those conversations were being had out there, especially like James and I, we had a lot of like heart-to-heart conversations about what it was like to be a nurse during COVID, but I just don't think people wanted to hear it. You know, they were just tired of it. So, so that's the only thing that I'm really bummed out about, but
yeah, you were part of the Tiffany Lindsay train. Other Lindsay was supposed to be on 41. She got COVID. So Tiffany got put in. And then she was put on standby, and then you got COVID, so she was put on 42, and then you were on.
What? Just awful. I can't imagine, because the amount of prep that goes into going out there is insane. And you did it twice. Yeah. And then didn't end up going. I mean, you quit your job. That's just so hard to have to go through all of that and then not actually get to the end until the third time. But I'm glad that you got there, because my word.
Thank you.
I can't even imagine. I mean, I did so many trips to the mall just to buy stuff. I was like, and people were commenting, like I was trying to pick out clothes and like, wow, you really like that color scheme. And I was like, yeah, purples and blues. Yay.
I went to Target one time because I mean, underwear is like really hard to find, and the right underwear, right?
Yes.
So I went to like Target. I mean, I had searched everywhere, and I went to Target, and I think my cart just had nothing but like shades of like blue and purples, and I probably had like $200 worth of underwear in there. And you should have seen like the checkout people. They thought I was like the craziest human ever. The good news is that on 42, they put me on the blue tribe. And then with 43, they put me on the blue tribe again.
So that's helpful.
Yes, but casting said, Lindsay, just go ahead and use the clothes that we had already picked out for 42. But I took a look at what they had picked and I didn't like it. So I was like, oh, sorry, those clothes don't exist anymore. And then like realizing like what it was that they had wanted, I kind of adjusted my wardrobe a little bit. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
The
underwear shopping for Survivor is an experience, I will say. Definite experience.
Did they tell you that you had to like put on the underwear and then submerge yourself in a bathtub for a long period of time? Yeah.
Yes. They're like, you can't, like I sent my options. They're like, you cannot wear this color because when it gets wet, it will be see-through. And I was like, oh, like, gotcha.
Yeah. So I'd like submerge myself in the bathtub and then I'd like stand up and look in the mirror for a long period of time. And I'm like submerging again. Yeah. I'm sorry, David, like a little TMI, but
this is a thing. It was, I can attest to this. Yeah. Survivor underwear
this
shopping.
Is the true behind the scenes information that
it really is.
And look, I love behind the scenes information. I just felt like, you know, I couldn't get enough of it when I was doing research to try to figure out like, how do I prepare for the game? So
yeah,
like throw in little pieces of information for future Survivor players.
Yeah, because there's just a lot of things that you really don't know and they don't tell you when you go out there. So you're all just kind of like walking around, well, how is this going to work? And it's like they like to keep you in suspense. So they don't explain these things to you. And then you're trying to figure it out on the fly, but it's like production related stuff. You're like, how come they can't tell me this? But they keep you on a need to know basis for sure.
And they give you like 5 days to do it. They'll be like, okay, it's Monday. We need your entire wardrobe mailed to us by Friday. And I'm like, yeah, I got a lot of stuff going on. Like, so I was literally shopping at Target at like 9 o'clock at night, trying to find underwear. So
that you then had to wear into the bathtub.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the funny thing is now is like my underwear drawer is just filled with like nothing but like blue and purple underwear that I never wore out to the game. So
this is amazing.
You'll never have to buy underwear.
Now the world will know what color underwear Lindsay is always wearing.
Always. Always.
I love this.
Good time.
This is fantastic.
Sorry,
we went off on a little bit of a tangent.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. I did want to ask you what's new, but obviously underwear isn't among it.
She's set in that area. Lots of blue and purple underwear.
Yeah. So what's going on? What's new in my world? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
So we are in the middle. I live in an old one-room schoolhouse that was built in 1860. So we are doing massive renovations right now that are kind of underway. You guys can't see it. Like this looks all clean and organized, but like right here on this side of the house, like I don't have windows. Yeah, we're restoring it to its original. It's called like Fieldstone. It's Pennsylvania Fieldstone. So we're completely restoring the house to just get it back to it's an actual historical landmark here in Chester County. And so we're just trying to make it look like it did back in 1860. So I've got that. And I told y'all I'm a nurse at summer camp. So the kids are coming with me and we're getting packed up for that. I'm working.
That's exciting.
Yeah, I'm a pediatric nurse right now. So just getting stuff done. The kids, my son's getting ready to graduate from 5th grade. So, you know, just kids activities. It's fun.
Well, good luck with that.
Yeah.
Construction, that's tough.
Yeah.
Well, we're timing it. So while we're at sleepaway camp, they'll be able to get it all taken care of. So
I love the optimism in your voice, as if contractors are known for being completely on time.
Yeah. It's never going to happen. Yeah. It's never going to happen. I just think in my head that it's going to happen.
Okay.
But look, I'm such a control freak.
Power of positive thinking.
Yeah. Well, I'm such a control freak that I don't know why I think I'm going to be okay with them doing such a massive renovation to my house and me not be here every single day. So it's a win-win either way. Like if I'm here, I'm going to be fine with it. If I'm not, I'll be fine too.
Yeah.
So.
Oh my gosh. That would be a big ask.
Yeah.
Well, good luck.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
All
right.
Weeks.
Yeah. So getting back to the rules, don't get excited, listeners. We're not in the rules section yet. We've got a while. But for this, we were talking earlier about you and Cassidy and James, and in this season right now, Carolyn has, of course, publicly confirmed that she studied the rules ahead of time, and we heard the story from Voce about that. I know of at least 2 people who snuck in the rules to study.
Yes.
Are
we talking about Cassidy and her giant notebook that she thought like nobody knew what she was doing?
Oh, that's funny.
Cassidy, I love you, but she would sit there. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get off topic, David.
No.
You guys have to hear this. So we're sitting there, and at Ponderosa, we're not allowed to talk to anybody, and we all have our tables, and I'm like, and you pick out books strategically, right? Like the books that you're going to read at Ponderosa. So it tells people about you, the clothes that you wear, the hoodies that you wear, the water bottle, like the stickers that you have on it. Like they all tell a story because you're not able to communicate with these people, right? So it's like, what are the messages? What do you want these people to know about you, right? And Mariah, who's writing in journals every single day, and she's got Harry Potter patches and Lord of the Rings stuff, and anyway, and then there's Cassidy with like this giant notebook of like nothing but like printed out pieces of paper, and like, I'm like, Cassidy, you're not fooling anybody, So I know she said she like snuck in the rules, but like I knew what she was doing. It was really cute.
It would have been really funny if you had just walked over, seen it, and been like, "Oh, the rules, huh?" But I know you're not allowed to talk, so
no, not at all. But I would like intentionally pass her when she had the notebook open to like go to the bathroom all the time just to see what she was doing, and that's when I was like, "Oh, that's what she's doing."
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, incredible. I was talking about this season. 2 people snuck them in also, and. I'm aware of several others, some still in the game, some not, who are also regular listeners. So this comes back to, the Why Blank Lost Alliance. Do we need to create a special password that players can use to let them know that they should align because they're listeners of this podcast?
I love that. Can it be grilled peanut butter and jelly?
Did you look at my notes? Because that was.
Did you really say that?
Yes.
It's terrible. I was in here thinking peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah. Yes, because.
But not grilled, because who the hell grills peanut butter and jelly?
Well, hold on. We'll get to that because
Lindsay, I saw that look.
Yes. Yeah. Well, you did not see the full extent of the responses, Jessica, because. We have to address this topic. I have had a lot of takes during my time as a podcaster. I never expected my stance on grilled peanut butter and jelly to be one of the hottest takes.
Wow.
Because
this is amazing.
We heard from a number of people right away when the podcast first came out, who voiced the same opinion that we did. But then as time went on, we heard from everybody else. My son, who watches Survivor and this podcast, informed me that he eats grilled peanut butter and jelly and likes it a lot, and was upset at us for slandering it, which of course is the exact term I used in opening last week's podcast when I defended regular peanut butter and jelly against it making Carson sick.
So you didn't even know that your son ate it?
He after he moved out, he didn't eat it when he was here. Then I started hearing from people on Twitter, including James, who also wants us to add bacon to it.
I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And then someone started a patron Facebook group thread. And of all the things that I have said, I just didn't expect this to cause such division among Survivor fans.
You didn't mention it was a thread on Facebook too.
Yeah, the patron Facebook group.
Oh, yeah. The patron. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And so
all because of grilled peanut butter and jelly.
Yes, and I know, Lindsay, you're coming in hot here.
I am. The second you said something negative about it, like I'm telling you, I audibly gasped. There is a restaurant in Philly, and they have grilled peanut butter and jelly on the menu. And when I say it is the best sandwich I've ever had, like, it is the best sandwich I've ever had. Now,
wait, What kind of bread is it even on?
Okay, so that's the thing, because I saw that David did his research today before we got on this podcast, and that he made his own grilled peanut butter and jelly. So I thought, if David's making his own grilled peanut butter and jelly, I have to make my own grilled peanut butter and jelly. So I said to my son and daughter, like, hey, mom's going to make a grilled peanut butter and jelly. Anybody want to try it? My daughter was like, no way. My son was like, yes, let's do it. And I made it. And I'll preface this by saying, I am the master grilled cheese maker. Like, I know how to make the best grilled cheese. Low and slow, right? Low temperature.
Okay.
You make it slow. You put the right amount of butter on it, like even on both sides, the right amount of cheese. But it wasn't that good today. I know. See? I was so heartbroken. And I was like, I'm going to have to apologize to David.
You're such a defender, and now you're like, not that good.
But I think bread's a factor. I believe the one that I had in Philly may have had some cinnamon on it.
Interesting.
Positive.
Maybe it's just the warm combination of jelly and peanut butter that made it taste bad. I don't know.
Well, the jelly like melted through the bread today. Like it was not good. David, what was your experience? How was yours?
So I realized that I was basing my opinion on a bad experience from over 30 years ago. And
those damn lunch ladies.
Yes. I actually like a toasted bagel, peanut butter and jelly. Yeah. Okay, that's good. So I knew I had to do my research. Like you said, you saw it on Twitter or on Facebook. Yeah. I made one so I could taste test it myself. And drum roll, I still didn't like it.
Okay.
See?
I the flavors just don't go together to me. Give me a grilled cheese any day. Give me peanut butter and jelly any day or every day. But they just don't go together. And I'm not here to yuck anyone's yum. For those of you who like it, I'm happy for you. I just will not be joining you.
You know what? I need people to send me recipes, because there were a lot of techniques that people talked about, right? As much as I'm like giving James crap about the whole bacon thing, James is a foodie. So you know what? I am going to have to put bacon on it, because I trust James like wholeheartedly. So James, you're right. I'm going to try some bacon on my grilled PB&J. But are people not putting butter on it? Are they doing oil? I saw people talking about air frying it. Like, am I missing out on air frying a sandwich? I've never done that before. So
interesting. I still see, I can get behind like toast and then putting peanut butter on the toast, or even jelly on the toast. But the idea of it just being like warm together, like I've never tried it. I don't think I ever want to try it.
It's hard to flip, like with cheese, like the bread stays together because it's got
like
I was trying to flip it, nothing was staying together. The jelly started like coming out on the other side of the bread, like
see, you even look grossed out right now.
I know, David. I am so sorry. I retract all my statements.
Wow.
But I will master it, and then I'm going to tell you guys about it. So
all right.
Yeah.
So David, you're right currently.
Woo!
Currently.
David, we need to write, David, you're currently right.
You're currently right. Yeah. Oh my gosh. What a lesson. I feel like I should, but I am curious about the bread. I feel like it really would come down to the right kind of bread. I feel like
I don't know. It just, the flavors just didn't, they didn't do it for me. So
I love peanut butter and jelly too.
I know, me too. And that's part of the problem, because I was advised, don't overdo it because it'll all ooze everywhere. So it actually cuts down on the amount of peanut butter and jelly that I could have on there, especially
now. What kind of jelly did you use?
I just used the jelly we had here.
No,
but was it grape jelly?
You really need the flavor?
Yes.
It was pumpkin.
Yes.
What? Oh, David.
That's what I had.
David.
I have been having peanut butter and jelly sandwiches with the pumpkin since Halloween. So
there should have been a disclaimer on your photograph earlier today.
You can't. No, that's not right. No. That's not peanut butter and jelly.
It was good. It's good.
I agree.
No, Bloomberg. Is not jelly.
It is.
Do people eat pumpkin jelly? Like, is that a thing?
Yeah, the Trader Joe's sells out of it like that.
But I don't know.
It's not
Bloomberg.
jelly. It's pumpkin spread or pumpkin. I don't know.
In my head, I'm thinking if it's going to be peanut butter and jelly, it's either grape or strawberry. Like that's just.
I mean, normally it would be grape for me. We used to make our own grape jam at my parents.
Okay.
But I
Pumpkin?
did not. I didn't have anything else.
I can't.
I mean, I had apricot. I had orange marmalade, but I don't think either of those would have been particularly good. And I feel
like orange marmalade might have been better than pumpkin.
But I was comparing it to what I have eaten already, and I've been eating peanut butter and the pumpkin jelly sandwiches, and they are good.
But that's not.
That's questionable. I don't know.
I can't.
I don't know.
Now a whole new thread is going to start.
You can't.
I should have just lied. I should have lied and said grape jelly.
Because we would have known.
No, you wouldn't have.
Yeah. Oh, yes, we would have.
Oh, that's right. I'm talking to 2 Survivor players. I forgot.
Yeah.
You would have known.
Yeah. Yeah. Pumpkin. Yeah. Listen, I can't. Your test that you now. What kind of jelly did you use, Lindsay?
Grape. Is there any other jelly?
Okay, so this is what I'm saying. Like it's either grape or strawberry, and I mean that's just what it is. Because in my head, I'm thinking, well, I have raspberry, but that's not. You can't use raspberry. That's not right. It has to be grape first, strawberry second. Mm-hmm. Pumpkin's not even on the list.
It is on the list here.
Oh no!
I was trying to recreate the one that I had back in Philly, but
which did not use pumpkin jelly.
No.
Yeah. See, okay.
See, but it's a fair test because I have been eating those regularly, so I know what I'm.
It's not. It's not a fair test because nobody's gonna. No, you're not gonna go to a restaurant that serves grilled peanut butter and jelly.
Maybe I'll open my own restaurant and serve.
Okay, and all right, and it'll be with pumpkin jelly. Good luck selling those sandwiches.
He's not selling any of those sandwiches.
No. Wrap it in a poster. Maybe they'll sell better.
There you go. All right. Well,
now I was not expecting pumpkin.
I know. I wasn't expecting to have to fess up to what it was.
And Lindsay, were you like, why won't he say? Were you questioning that too?
Like there are so many different flavors that were like swirling in my head. And the last flavor I would have guessed.
Pumpkin. Yeah, never. Not in a million years.
Something came up in my throat when he said it too. I could be wrong. Man. I could be wrong, but.
No, I was certainly not expecting pumpkin.
I should have just lied.
That's like the Survivor's famous last words.
Yeah, I should have just lied. Schemed and plotted.
Yeah, you did very bad scheming and plotting.
I didn't know I had to do it.
Oh my God.
So
Lord,
yeah.
I'm sorry. It's 32 minutes in. All right.
I know.
We've been talking about PB&Js for way too long.
Yes. So yes, that was a lot of discussion with very little to do about Survivor. So we'd better move on. Normally at this point, we'd talk about, normally at this point, we'd be to the rules. But normally at this point, we'd talk about some things that happened this week on the show. But I actually want to stay in last week for a moment, because I thought it was funny that Brandon said in his interviews that he and others forgot to check in about a possible vote. And then at the beginning of the episode, Lauren's like, oh, I wanted to do it, but nobody wanted to listen. And Jamie's like, well, Brandon specifically said no. So we have all of these stories swirling around. And for his part, Brandon just tweeted out like a confused emoji. So even he is confused about this whole thing.
And it was also something that was discussed by Kane as well.
Yeah.
So Kane had a completely different version of what transpired. So it is very interesting to just see. And also, was anyone else confused when we were watching the episode this week and they were painting their tribe flag? And that's what Brandon said they were doing when they were supposed to be talking about this and they weren't because they were distracted.
I think that flag, I mean, they clearly got interrupted while painting it to have to go to tribal council. So they must have just been finishing it up.
Maybe that's what it was. I was confused.
Timelines are like really off.
I feel like that might be what happened because
I mean, I can't tell you how many times I would watch our season and I'd be like, wait a second, that never happened. And like, even if you look at my edit, like the day that I got voted out and them showing like the clips of me being paranoid, like my hair is different, and sometimes I'd have a bun and
it was weird of you to be so paranoid and stop to redo your hair in the middle of it.
I know. I know. Girls gotta look good. So, so yeah, I'm just, you start to notice like the timeline's a little bit off. So
yeah. So anyway, just to wrap up the whole vote split thing, the thing is, in the end of the day, like we discussed last week, it wouldn't have mattered anyway, because Tika would have just voted whatever way they needed to vote.
Right.
And, they wouldn't have been able to hide it as well, but that's the only thing that would have changed.
Right.
Now I want to take us further back in time, a couple weeks.
Oh my.
I swear at some point we'll go forward.
Okay.
Because Lauren, passing her extra vote to Jamie in this episode, answered a question that we brought up during the split tribe vote, when people were insisting that Heidi could have gotten out one of the Soka. And, therefore saved Matt by forcing Jamie or Brandon to vote Lauren. And as I said back then, if Lauren could pass her extra vote to Jamie or Brandon, it still wouldn't have worked. It would have just tied it up. And then, in all likelihood, Jam would have just been like, well, I'm not going to rocks for Matt. And he would have switched his vote, and that would have been that. So, we can finally wrap up that question once and for all too. No, Heidi could not have saved Matt.
There we are.
So, now we can move to the present. And I think we should start with something good for the present, because so often we don't. And we have the so-called day off that they got that led to some really great storytelling and player interaction, otherwise known as something we really like about Survivor. Specifically, we got to know Carolyn better and hear her story as she talked about being proud of herself. And she should be proud of herself, because, what she's accomplished, who she is amazing. And I'm not just saying that because we know she has a poster and everything. There's but one small reason. But there's a reason that Voce told us on this podcast a few weeks ago about how he encouraged her and said she would absolutely get cast on the show.
Yeah. I mean, her backstory is incredible. And it's, I think, really helped her be the character. And I hate to even use that term, but there's no other good term to describe it when it comes to these archetypes that they're looking for in Survivor. But she's kind of like in a category, but not, which I think is fascinating for her, because it is so individualized, and she's really true to herself, which that's a difficult thing to do when you're out there, to really just put it all out for everyone to see, but then also make it part of your game, which I'm really appreciating, that she's recognizing the fact that people just think I'm confused. And it's great, because she really does know what's going on, and she's hiding it so well just behind who she is. So it's really incredible to see all of that kind of coming full circle, so we can understand her better and where she's come from and what she's been through, and how just happy she is with her entire life. It's a beautiful, beautiful story.
Yeah. I think my only concern with it, and I'm gonna tell you guys this, like, Carolyn, I'm obsessed with her, like absolutely obsessed. I just love how authentic she is, and she makes no apologies. And I mean, I just find her like incredibly entertaining. I would love to be friends with her. But my concern though is that her gameplay is getting lost in the game. Because for a very long time, when I'm talking game with my friends, I've got all my friends watching the show now. And when we're talking about it, everyone's like, who's your favorite player right now? And I'm like, I think Carolyn's playing the best game because, and I'd give all these reasons, and I'm like, but people aren't seeing it.
Yes. And that is a fair concern that we always talk about in the final tribal, that if you have to sit there and explain what your game was and people didn't see it, that's going to be a tough sell.
The only thing I'll say is that Kane did acknowledge in his interview, in one of his interviews, that people knew she was playing. He just said they weren't worried about her. So it's, I don't know yet, if, and we've seen sort of the same thing about Carson. People know, or at least Kane knew he was playing, but then at the same time, everybody thinks Carson is with them. So there's a lot of different things going on there. But what I can say is that segment about Carolyn was about 1,000,000 times better than someone finding and reading an advantage or sticking their hand into a bag and losing a vote.
Yeah.
So
yeah, those moments are definitely few and far between on Survivor at this point, which is frustrating.
yes.
Mhm.
Now, speaking of few and far between, we know that a lot of times when something is called a live tribal, we point out that it is not.
Mhm.
And once again, we have that this week because I
Mhm.
know there was discussion about it being a live tribal. There was nothing live about it. They all ran around and whispered, and they ended exactly where they began.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Live tribal, I think people just think, oh, we got up and talked.
Right. And I
Live
think that's the
tribal.
way Kane was using it in his
Yeah,
interviews, because in some
I think
interviews he's
so.
like, I sparked a live tribal. But then when he was talking to Rob, he said nothing changed.
Right.
So, no, a live tribal is people are changing their plans in the moment, not
Mhm.
verifying that they're doing what they were going to do anyway.
Right. Like a check-in at tribal council doesn't count as a live tribal.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
And, Kane talked about it was chaotic and there were 4 names out there, but all 4 of those names were planned. It was planned
Right.
split votes. It's not like they were just randomly shooting votes out there.
Mhm.
None of it was chaos. None of it was live.
Yeah. Sorry, Kane. You did not create a live tribal.
You
You
created some
created a lot of
entertainment.
whispering.
Right.
And subtitles. But
Yes. Well, that was, I will say, that was hysterical. I
It was funny.
appreciate that the editors were like, let's have a little bit of fun here for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Another thing I want to mention from this episode is the way Danny was so weirdly mad about people sitting out for rice.
Mhm.
I would be encouraging everyone to sit out. I mean, then I get food and have fewer people to compete against.
Yeah.
I might have thought it was all a ploy for him to make people suffer because he's doing better than a lot of them are. But he just kept saying things like, we're here to play Survivor and let's play the game. But participating in a challenge you can't win isn't playing Survivor. Making the best strategic decision to move forward is. And for some of them, sitting for rice was that best decision.
Yeah, this is a tough one, though, because I will say we never had to negotiate for things, but
Well, there was no negotiating there. I mean, Jeff doesn't understand what the word means.
no,
My
and
price
that's
is
fair.
4.
Right.
Okay.
And
What if
that's
we
not
get 2
negotiated.
people? I
No,
said 4.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a sale. The price is this. That's it. That's not, there's no negotiation. But I will say that there was one of the challenges that we had where it was food or you try for immunity. And there was no chance. I was going to sit down and eat sandwiches and have chips and drink beer because I was like, I really need to potentially win this. So in that moment, I was like, absolutely not. I'm competing. But it is also very telling when you see the people who are willing to sit down, because you get kind of a little glimpse of their comfort level and how they feel. And I understand you're hungry and you might not win the challenge anyway. But okay, you might not win the challenge, but you're also potentially indicating I feel fine and I'm not necessarily at risk. So you can send a mixed message by doing it, even if your intentions are something completely different. Because it's not like you're sitting there going, well, I can't win this anyway, and I'm bad at balance, and I can't do this and that. So that to me is the risk that you take when you make a decision like that, because you can try to explain it away later. Like, well, I knew I wasn't going to win. Okay, but you got to eat something everybody wants to do. Or, I mean, in my instance, it was they got to eat individually. It wasn't food for the tribe. So I do feel like someone could read into that decision and turn it into something it might not be.
I saw somebody in reference to Danny, why we thought like he was so adamant about like everyone playing. Someone had said that maybe Danny was like really thriving out there because he didn't need to eat as much and he loved being able to see everyone just emotionally weak, and he knew that rice, then they would now be able to be put on the level that he was at in terms of being able to talk strategy. Because you hear everybody say like that rice just breathed life back into me, right? Like I'm a completely different person. I personally never had rice out on the island, so I don't know what that would be like. But you know, we had a lot of food out there, so I don't know. I mean, as much as I could say right now, like I would never sit out for food. I never went without food, so I don't know what that's like, you know.
Yeah.
But I'd never sit out for rice. I can tell you that. So
yeah, I feel like I don't know. Maybe that was Danny's reasoning. Maybe he just seems to be that type of player who's like, this is how we play Survivor. We do challenges, you know, and maybe I'm wrong.
No, but I think that there is something to be said about he's a fireman, right?
Mhm.
So he's probably regimented in how you do things, and that you work for what you have, and you work hard, and that definitely seems to be the way he is out there. He's working very hard, and he's trying to do well, and so I think that maybe it's just part of his personality. Like, you don't sit out, you fight through everything, and you work,
and there's some pride that comes along with like your season, right? You want to be known as the season who like didn't need the rice, right? So I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting at tribal council. He was like, well, some people said they were doing it for the rest of the tribe. So, well, fine. Then you don't get it, but the rest of the tribe does. And we'll see if you sit out. But I would turn that around. Danny, you were so gung-ho that they shouldn't sit out. How about you don't get any rice?
Yeah,
you know?
Just the people that sit out get rice.
Right. It should go back to the better way to do it is the way Jessica was describing.
Yeah.
That it should be the people who don't compete eat. It's eat or compete, you know?
Yeah, right.
You know.
Somebody brought up the point. I was listening to a podcast earlier this week, and they brought up the point that like there's so much drama that revolves around the rice. Like, why aren't we giving the tribes rice? Everyone's always fighting about like how much to eat, how to cook it. You know, I know that on our season, like Cassidy and Gio were getting in a fight on how to like cut and cook the cassava, you know? And so you have these, you know, these moments where people are fighting, like, it creates drama. It makes for good TV. Like, just
people have dumped the rice into the fire.
Yes.
I mean,
way better drama than we got out of this, quite honestly. I know
I think like pouring the rice into his dirty sock. I mean, there's just so many good like rice moments. Like,
I forgot about that.
Yes.
Well, and I think it was, what season did they have a flood? Was that it washed away their whole camp, and it took the rice with
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and they had to go find it, and it was like it was so dramatic because they were just so crushed. Everything had been destroyed, but they needed to go find the rice that had flooded down.
I feel like it was Africa.
I feel like it was Africa. That would make, but yes, I agree with you, Lindsay. There are so many potentially great moments that come with the rice itself, just even the division of who gets to take the food first. How much do they take? Is someone taking extra? That all becomes a thing. I think that's a really great point. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So,
all right. Well, it is time for our Jeff Probst is wrong about blank segment. And we have a lot because Jeff did his whole podcast focused on controversial twists. And Lindsay's like, uh-oh, David's getting to this one.
Let's go. Let's go. Yeah.
Now, there is way too much to fully discuss here. We can hit the low points. You know, he said at the start of this podcast that he was holding himself accountable. We all knew that was BS before even listening to the rest, because rarely does he hold himself accountable. So he did admit that a couple of his previous ideas were terrible, but only the absolutely most egregious, like the hourglass changing history. But
thanks, Jeff.
Yeah. Even then, he was like, oh, well, it's always easier to be a critic after the fact than it is coming up with the idea beforehand. Except that, Jeff, as soon as we heard about it, we knew it was a bad idea.
Yeah.
Almost anyone could see that was a bad idea. You know, it was the same thing with Edge of Extinction. We literally, Edge of Extinction, on this podcast said, this is horrible, and this is what could happen. And we predicted the outcome of the season.
Yeah.
And so for him to say, oh, it's easy to be a critic after. No, we're a critic before. But, you know, the other thing is even when he had a chance to change it
Mhm.
for Survivor 42, after getting all the criticism from the players in the moment, he left it in.
Yeah.
So he needed 2 seasons and all of the public criticisms before he is now finally willing to admit it.
Yeah. I feel like, excuse me, there should be like, I want to say like it's a control group, or you know how like they test things out, like I don't know, maybe peanut butter and jelly, grilled cheese, or whatever sandwiches with pumpkin jelly. I don't know, but like you would think that there would be like a group that Jeff would say, "Hey, here's my idea, and I want your honest opinion about this idea before it's implemented." Because for people like us and other people who heard about these new twists and then had the reactions we did, I feel like there had to have been somebody that was saying, Jeff, like, did you think maybe, I don't know. I love Jeff. He's a great guy, but somebody had to have said, I'm not sure about this one.
I don't know. They may all be in the cult of Jeff.
That's what I'm wondering. There are so many people that are involved in production and like creating the show. Like, so I wonder, was everybody sitting around and like, let's try it? You know, because I understand where Jeff's coming from. It's just like the show becomes stale if we don't try new things. The hourglass just isn't it.
Yeah.
No, it's really not. It's really not.
No.
Yeah. Now, I mentioned Edge of Extinction, and Jeff didn't agree that this was horrible, and even doubled down. In the discussion of Chris winning the season, he listed off all the things Chris did. And one of his co-hosts said, she's not sure Chris would have won unless he did all those things. And they all completely ignored the biggest problem with the whole theme, which was the jury telling him what he had to do because he got to hang out with the jury for almost the whole damn game.
Boy, I would love that during my trials if I could just go hang out.
I know.
And they'd be like, okay, listen, try this. This is what we're looking for.
Yeah, we have multiple podcasts where we rehash that, but
yeah,
it's not only that, but I think when you've got a bunch of people that are on Edge of Extinction voting for the winner, they're automatically going to think that's one of me out there, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so they're naturally going to want to vote for the person that they stayed on Edge of Extinction with. Whereas I wonder what the outcome would have been if the Edge of Extinction hadn't been able to vote. I mean, I guess that wouldn't have worked out because that is the jury. But, I just wonder how that would have worked out if they had had a separate jury and only that jury had been able to vote instead of all the people that had been on Edge of Extinction.
Right.
It's been a while since I've watched it. I can't even remember all the details with that. So somebody's going to call me out for that. But
it's okay. You can put that out of your mind.
I do a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah. That's okay.
Yeah. Now, another thing Jeff addressed was fire making. Well, I should say he allegedly addressed fire making. What he actually did was cherry pick one specific instance last season of Jesse and ignoring the entirety of the situation. As our friend Adam Klein responded to the Survivor account when they tweeted that part of the podcast, Adam said, this question/premise set up a total straw man argument that fit right into what Jeff already believes about fire making, that we just want our favorites to win. People don't hate fire making simply because that was the mechanism that eliminated Jesse. We don't like it regardless.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I was going to say it, and then I, saw his tweet, and I was like, Adam, you put it perfectly. But besides that, Jeff completely ignored that Jesse and others might have played very differently if fire making hadn't been there. Because, again, that doesn't fit Jeff's narrative. And Jesse himself responded to the Survivor tweet saying, I do wonder what a regular vote would have been. I'm better at pitching ideas than Fire. Could I have gotten a tie vote and made Fire against someone other than Gabler? So
good question.
That's another thing. I mean, he was so, like I said, it was just cherry picking his arguments there.
Yeah. And I do think that it's sad because it lends to that argument that we've said time and time again, that when the twists end up deciding game outcomes when they really shouldn't. You know, this should be about social capital, about relationships that you've made, and about building those bonds and bringing people together to vote, as opposed to building a fire.
Yeah, I will close out the podcast thing by just mentioning that podcast thing.
I was saying, like, we're done.
Yeah.
Hey, we're only 55 minutes in. I mean,
we haven't even started yet. They went back to their softballs for the "This Is Why Jeff Sucks" segment, with someone complaining that they don't have the previously on Survivor segment anymore, while also telling Jeff they love him, thereby kind of missing the point of "This Is Why Jeff Sucks." But yeah, that's definitely among the biggest issues. I mean, I guess it ranks higher than whether he needs a haircut, which was one of the previous ones, but not by much.
Yeah. Well, if you're going to bring anything back, just bring back the introduction of each of the people who are playing the actual game.
Yes. All right. I know we covered a lot. Is there anything else you wanted to cover before we get to the rules?
Listen, we should probably get going. It's 56 minutes in.
Yeah, you know. We had a lot of peanut butter and jelly talk to cover.
We had underwear to talk about. There's so many things.
The good stuff, the important stuff, right?
Yes. All right. Well, just before we see how Kane did, we need to mention that the rules we're about to discuss come in a shorter and much more colorful version in poster form.
That's right.
Go to robhaswebsite.com/yxlostfeed and scroll down to the poster and click on it. We'll put that address right there momentarily. Remember that, we talked about this already. Carolyn revealed in a tweet that she has a poster. She says she lives by the rules. So, then
I do love it now when I listen to her in her confessionals and she's saying something and I feel like she's channeling David Bloomberg.
Yes,
absolutely.
You can also scroll down on the page and get it as a shirt, so you can always wear it and have it with you. Or you could get the checklist shirt that Jessica is wearing right now.
Ta-da!
So
it's lovely.
Again, that is robhasawebsite.com/yxlostfeed. All right. We are ready for this.
Let's go.
Earlier,
that was like a very long preview.
Yes.
Like I don't know what we would call this. Yeah. All right. But now
earlier in the season, Kane had a lot of fun with the sword. But what he really needed this week, as someone mentioned already, was a shield. He thought he had a good group of warriors and wizards on his side so he could slay his enemies. But it turns out that among them were rogues and assassins, eager to take the $1 million treasure from him. What made him the target this week? Was he the biggest threat out there, or were there other reasons? It's time to figure out why Kane lost. We, of course,
you're just looking for reasons to hold up the sword.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm just like Kane. We, of course, begin with the first and most important rule, scheme and plot. I would say Kane came in with the intent to strategize and did his best to pull it off. But as he said in this episode before Tribal Council, he had yet to actually vote someone out. Kane aligned with Maddie. Then Kane aligned with Matthew. Things didn't go real well for him in that regard. And, when you look back, especially after the first vote, when he was the lone surviving vote against Brandon, he was kind of in trouble. But one way luck helped him was that Ratu went on a winning streak. So he had time to fix that, at least well enough to move forward. In fact, he told Dalton Ross that because of that, they all bonded and became the Kumbaya tribe to the point that they were super tight. And his plan was to go Ratu strong to the end. The thing was, we didn't see a whole lot of that planning and strategy and discussion from him on TV.
Yeah, I really feel for him because I do think that his knees were kind of cut out from below him, and it really made it difficult because then when you're playing from the bottom so early, then you have to try to play catch up. And so instead of really leading the charge and coming up with plans, you're really apologetic for what happened over here. And oh my word, people are going to be upset with me. I was the only one that voted against Brandon. He's still here. Everyone's going to be looking at me. Everyone else was like strategizing really heavy going into that tribal council. And I think he was just like, well, this is what we're doing. And he thought that's what it was going to be. But we saw Matthew at a different level at that point with the way he was going to utilize his vote. And so poor, Kane was just kind of left out there on his own. And I feel like that minimized his ability to play because he had to then be apologetic, try to regain the trust of Brandon. And instead of continuing the trust he had, it was like up here and then it went down here. And so I really think it really, really paralyzed his game for a bit.
Yeah, I didn't know if you had anything to add there, Lindsay.
No, I agree. I think the hard thing for me though is I wonder like how much strategizing actually goes on that we're just not seeing. One of the things that I noticed that was a reoccurring theme in Kane's exit interviews is he was like, I really wish you guys could have seen more of what was going on, but because nothing ever panned out the way that I wanted it to, I didn't get that edit. So yeah. I want to be very careful with the words that I use here because he could have been doing more and we just didn't see it.
Yeah, he was definitely, his edit was Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
He got decent airtime as far as it goes, but most of it focused on D&D. Production decided this is who you are. And you're going to compare everything to Dungeons and Dragons. And that was it, and we heard other players talk about his strategy. We saw a couple glimpses, but he told Rob in his interview, like you said, he was doing more of it. So I do wish that we would have seen it, but then I wouldn't have known to wave a dagger around and, have this intro that I did. So,
and don't get me wrong. Like, I know that he was never on the right side of the vote, he was siding with Maddie and then she went out and then he was with Matt and he went out and then Brandon. So like he never did, like he said himself, he never got to get enough footing in the game to actually make some traction. So honestly, like that's where I think the fault lies, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Well, I do think there's something to be said though about strategizing but strategizing in a way that has an effect on the game. Like there are things that you can be doing when you're attempting to strategize. So he could have very well been making those attempts and doing those things, but as you said, it wasn't panning out and it wasn't bringing the game where he wanted it to. So it's a difficult place to be because you can try, but it's not working well. So yes, you're strategizing, but it's not impacting your game successfully or well. And so it's a really tough spot to be in because you want to be doing all of these things. And I think Kane really wanted to be making those decisions as he was trying to do, but he wasn't able to get there. And so it has this negative impact on your game strategy because it's not turning it into anything that you can utilize that will be long-term and beneficial for you.
Yeah, I think him and Carson had a lot of conversations that we didn't see. I think maybe they had something going on early on, and then him, Franny, and Matt. And then him and Franny weren't able to have access to Matt to strategize that way when they split the tribes up. So honestly, I think again, like I don't want to say that was the exact turning point for him where, things started to go south, but I think that definitely hurt his game.
Yeah. He was trying to do these other, this other scheming and plotting. And, he even said in his interviews, he and Carson knew that one would turn on the other at some point. He just didn't expect it to be so soon, which is why you do it soon. So you're the turner, not the one turned on, although don't have to tell you that. Sorry. I realized as I was saying it, I'm like, oh, this is bad.
He's like, this is about to come out.
Yeah. And that's also where Tika got me when I was making my prediction last week. I thought they really did intend to flick back to work with Ratu, but it turned out that was only one option. Instead, they used their position to get Kane and Lauren and Jamie to trust them enough So they could do the most damage, get rid of Kane, flush the vote, and ruin their plans.
Yeah. Very strategic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand why nobody's going after Tika right now. It's absolutely blowing my mind.
And Franny, can we just put a little pin in
Franny
this?
gets all the credit.
Franny
gets all the credit.
Franny gets the credit. I think we'll have some to say about that. I think it's Appendix A, probably.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I don't mean to get ahead. Yeah.
No. That's okay.
Yeah. Are you going to yell at Lindsay for jumping ahead?
Why would I ever yell at Lindsay?
David and I have only disagreed once.
And then you came around.
You don't remember what we disagreed on?
Oh, I thought it was the grilled peanut butter and jelly.
No.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I just sat through a disagreement.
We're talking about Survivor related.
Oh, gosh. I'm going to have to. Is that something we can discuss
still
here?
agree on it.
Uh-oh. Okay. We're going to have to. We might have to get to that at the end.
We will.
All right. We could go to the second rule, which says not to scheme and plot too much and to keep your scheming secret. Now, while I mostly thought Kane was fine here, as I was kind of mulling it over, there are a couple situations to discuss. Kane told Rob that one problem he had was when his name came up at Mergatory, and he had to put in some work to ensure that he wasn't the one getting booted, which led to him showing his cards earlier than he planned and attracting attention, and of course also his deadly vote against Jam Jam. I think this goes back to what you were saying, Jessica, about him playing from the bottom. And so once he heard his name again, he did the same thing. He really didn't need to put in that work because the vote was going against Josh. Yeah. But he heard from Carson that his name had been tossed around. And even though Carson said, it was dismissed, he still panicked about it. Now, I know it's easy for me, the one non-Survivor player on this panel, to sit here and say, well, you shouldn't have panicked about it. But I also know sometimes there are situations that cause you to panic.
Like, I don't know. Someone mentioned your name.
Yeah. And we at least saw that on TV last season. So I didn't know if you'd have any thoughts on that, Lindsay.
I do have some thoughts on that. In our season, we went 9 straight days saying that Gio was the vote. And everything was good. Cassidy was out on a walk. And we're sitting on the beach, and I go up to Gio, and Gio comes up to me, and he says, hey, I know we're talking about James going out. Gio he gave me James's name, but it wasn't actually James's name. I knew Gio secretly wanted Cassidy out. And Gio said, Lindsay, I heard your name, and I just want you to know, I don't want it to be you going home tonight. And even though like our core 4 alliance had been talking about Gio for 9 days, you hear your name come up and you start to stress out. And I think there's a little bit of everybody that plays the game that thinks to themselves, like, well, of course they want to get me out, so it makes sense. Even if you think you're not the target at the time, you start to question yourself and you're like, I'm playing a pretty good game. I can understand why they might want to vote me out. So you all of a sudden do become paranoid. I hate that word. You guys don't understand. Like, I cringe at that word.
Well, yeah, because you're not paranoid if they truly are out to get you.
And I think that's what bothered me is like, I sit there and I read the feedback on Twitter and the Discord chats and Reddit. And I'm like, you guys don't understand. I had a reason to be paranoid when Gio's coming up to me and saying, hey, your name's being tossed around. Well, isn't that what I'm supposed to do, is like get paranoid? And it was such a small amount of time. I mean, to you guys, it looked like I was paranoid for like hours. It was just, and again, you don't have a ton of time because by the time you get back to tribal council and before you go into lockdown, there's such a small window of time. And I think honestly, like that's my biggest frustration with a shorter game is that you just don't have enough time out there.
Right.
Everyone loved this last episode because we got a day off, or they got a day off, and we were able to see just the social aspect of the game. And that's, in my opinion, what's missing from the new era of Survivor. And it's always been from day one. I mean, since my very first episode, it's always been my favorite part of the episode.
Yes. Yes,
You know,
100%. Mhm.
and I think part of it is because I am such a social person, and I love watching social dynamics and the way that people interact with each other and how they react to one another, and
Right.
even get annoyed with one another. I just feel like we don't get enough of that in this new era. And this episode, I don't know about you guys, but you know, my favorite thing to do after the episode and during the episode is to like get on Twitter and see what people are saying. And everyone's saying like, this is such a refreshing episode.
Yes,
You know,
it really was.
I saw a lot of people saying this was their favorite episode.
Yeah.
And while I was like, it wasn't that good in terms of strategy and stuff, we got to get to know these people. And
but it's interesting because even though it might not seem like there was a whole lot of strategy happening, that's what turns into strategy.
Agreed.
Is those moments where you are developing these relationships and you're learning things about people that can bring you closer. And then you start to think, I could work with this person. And I think that I can benefit my game if I work with this person. And so I just feel like those moments are so significant for that very reason. You have to have time for these players to get to know each other, to develop bonds and relationships, and potentially even hate each other. I mean, those things because that can have an effect on the game too. So I wish that there were more moments like this where we see these things developing and we see them coming together. So yeah, I mean, it really was nice to see because it gives us the information that fills in the blanks. Like, we don't know why this person is interested in working with this person. Well, here we go.
Right. And, you know, if Jeff wants to mix things up, and I know that, you know, last season things mixed up a lot more quickly at the merge, but this season the tribes have been staying pretty rigid. Well, they don't have time to meet and talk to anyone else really. So of course you're gonna, you know, we've talked about this before. You're gonna be conservative and contract back to where you are. And I think, you know, like I said, we'll get to it later too, but I think this goes somewhat to the question of why haven't they turned on Tika? Well, because it would require two tribes that are at war working together. And that needs time to develop. So
something, I don't know if any other players have talked about this, but you know, for us in such a shorter game, we didn't really have days off. I mean, I think
I was surprised they had one.
Yeah. And even if you have a day off, I remember like one specific day off that we had, we still just kept anticipating something happening. And so you're constantly checking tree mail. You're constantly looking out in the ocean, waiting for a boat to come. And something people don't talk about enough is like the preparation that you have to do before you get taken off to do something. So making sure your water bottles are filled, making sure your clothes are dry, making sure you're packed up, you know, getting the walks in on time, making sure that you've got your fire covered up just in case you go somewhere and they take your flint away. There's so many different things that they don't talk about. So I remember our one day off, it probably took us till like the middle of the afternoon for us to have that aha moment, which is like, nothing's happening today. And so like when I'm seeing people sit around and like laying around the campfire and relaxing, like I don't remember doing that because you're constantly in this go, go, go motion. So yeah, I really do think the thing that we're missing in this new era is more downtime.
Yeah. And I do think that that's one of the interesting dynamics with 39 days. We always had a day. Like we knew we were having a day off, like because there was a schedule and it was very regimented. And the days off, you got to do your laundry. You know, you like got to take care of camp. You got to relax for just a little bit. Fishing became more of a thing because you didn't have to worry about conserving the energy. You could go look for snails and do all of these things because we knew like, oh, we have a day off. Like this is down, like there's nothing happening today. But yeah, I do think that because you're in a much more fast-paced environment. I was surprised when they said they had a day off. I was like, how are they having a day off? How is that even possible with all of the things they have to accomplish?
Well, because the last 3 votes were bing, bing, bing. I think they were like days 13, 14, 15 or something like that. Where, you know, and
they got to go back to 39 days.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, going back to the second rule here, I did want to mention also for Kane, you know, we talked about that Kane had discussions, strategic discussions with Carson. And that meant Carson knew Kane's strategic abilities probably better than anyone else. So when it came down to the decision of who to target, and like Jam was already pushing for Kane, Carson probably was leaning towards it, or at least it was hard for him to argue against it.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because he probably did have the most insight into that than anyone. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but how much say does Carson have in this trio?
I think he was the mediator. I think you had Carolyn wanting one thing and Jam wanting the other. I think Carson is usually the mediator of the group because, and I think Rob even mentioned this, that we saw what happened when Carson was swapped out, and Jam and Carolyn couldn't get along very well. And so now I think he's the one. Like I had planned to discuss this later, but my guess or my bet is that the deal was, okay, we'll do Kane this vote and then flip against Danny next vote.
Just alternate.
Yeah. And especially since Carolyn wanted Danny out. Like, okay, we can get Kane now and then flip and get Danny next time.
Yeah, but I think Carolyn had a point. Why were we in such a rush to get Kane out?
I have some thoughts on that.
Okay.
In terms of, again, I think they'll come in Appendix A, and I know I was the one who brought it up. So, but
oh, come on, you were jumping ahead, and now you're going to stop us.
Yes, I am. See, I'm the Carson. I'm the mediator.
No, that would make you the Jam, right?
Oh, okay,
Yes, that would make you the Jam.
I would say yes.
I mean, he is my winner pick.
Good job, Lindsay.
All right, we'll move on to Rule 3 because that'll get us closer to Appendix A. It tells players to be flexible, and we discussed how earlier how Kane was working with some people outside of RHAP, like Carson and Jam. And he also mentioned, and you also mentioned, Lindsay, Franny and Matt, if that split tribal council hadn't happened. Jessica, overall, how do you think he did here?
I think he had to be flexible, right? Because of all of the constant struggles he was finding himself in, where everyone who he was working with ended up leaving the game, either through a vote or because they were injured. And so this is that struggle that he was having. He's trying to strategize. He strategizes with someone, and then that person goes home. Now I got to start over. I'm going to strategize with this person. That person goes home. I got to start over. So he really didn't have much choice. But then I think what ended up happening was once the game shifted and then we see them come together at the merge, all of a sudden he was like locked in. It was like, this is it. Like I am, Ratu strong, and this is it. And this is what I'm going to do. Even though for the whole beginning of the game, it was up and down and having to change plans all the time. It was like, once he felt like he had like a group, like I have someone, like I have people, and he didn't want to go away from that. So it's like this weird mix where at the beginning he had to, but then after the merge, he was not interested.
So, Lindsay, I don't know if you had anything else on that, or else we'll move on to
I
I
agree with her.
Okay.
He has to be flexible in this game when every single ally that he has just keeps getting either voted out or
falling out.
Quit.
Yeah.
Climbing up rocks, and which we didn't even mention that. Okay, why are they still climbing up the rocks? Okay,
it's different rocks. Someone pointed out on Twitter. It is different rocks. These are not as steep. They're nice and curved, and they
still a bad idea. Stop climbing up rocks.
And every rock out there is like crazy slippery. I couldn't understand why they kept telling me I needed to wear my shoes in the water, and then the second I went in the water, I mean,
you learn very quickly.
Ate it. Absolutely ate it.
Yeah. Well, the fourth rule tells players not to let their emotions control them. Lindsay, how do you think Kane did here?
So I know Kane just he just graduated from law school. And Jessica, I know I'm married to a lawyer. So
you know what it's like.
I know what it's like. He is very good at compartmentalizing. So my husband and I believe Jessica and I believe Kane are probably really good at compartmentalizing their emotions and being able to set them aside and make rational decisions. And so I definitely think that him just coming out of law school after having been in law school for like 3 years and being in that mindset was actually like an advantage for him in the game.
I love that answer.
Yeah.
That is so spot on.
I mean, but don't you agree? Like,
I totally do.
Yeah.
Because my kids say to me all the time, and even my husband, like, Jessica, I don't know how you do what you do and then still function, because I deal with really horrific cases and really awful things that have happened to people. And I have to be able to separate and look at things differently. Like, this is a really awful thing that happened to this person, but this is really great evidence in order to prove that this happened to this person. And so it does require you to be able to separate emotions, because if I let my emotions come in, I would be just upset and crying all the time with the just horrificness of what I'm dealing with. So I think that is definitely, I think, very spot on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was debating whether cockiness would be an emotion, because we saw him cycle over the last 2 episodes with him slightly misquoting Han Solo in his motto of "Don't get cocky, kid."
Here we go.
And then this week admitting that he did indeed get cocky, but had his eyes open. For this vote, even though, as we discussed, he thought the Tika were on board, he also talked in interviews about how he knew if they weren't, there wasn't a whole lot he could do about it. So I think by this vote, the cockiness was definitely gone. But for a short moment, it was there. And other than that, I don't think he actually made any moves based on emotions, like you both said.
Yeah.
I think he just got comfortable for a minute, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily like define it as cockiness. I think I remember reading an interview, or maybe he was talking in an interview, where he said like the biggest mistake that he made was after, let me see what vote it was. Was it the Brandon vote, the Josh vote? I can't remember.
After the Brandon vote, he came back and he was like, okay, this is what I have to do.
But I think like you have those days out there, you know, you come off that high of like a win or a victory or a success, and like they come few and far between out there, right? And I wasn't out there long enough, so I don't know what that feels like. But I have to imagine that like at some point everybody goes through that. But I definitely don't think it was so bad that it harmed his game to the point where it caused him to get voted out because of it.
Right.
I mean, I only used the word cocky because he used it. Otherwise, I would have said comfortable also. And did it affect his game? Probably wasn't the worst thing in the world.
I've just seen like way cockier players. I'm not going to name names, but like we can talk about that later.
Oh, that's the thing we disagree on. I remember now.
Here
Yes.
it comes. Back.
You mentioned cocky players. Not that I'm suggesting the person that we disagree about.
That is not cocky, and the person that we're discussing, because we may end up discussing it on this podcast. Yeah. I'm not suggesting that person.
No, you're not. I might be. So
I'm fascinated. I don't know what this discussion is about, but I can't wait to be the middleman.
Oh yeah, it's so good.
So much fun.
So, all right. The 5th rule reminds players they need to pretend to be nice and play the social game, much like Lindsay was just doing. Kane seemed very well liked. While Jam, of course, wanted Kane out for daring to write down his name, it wasn't like he disliked him personally. So I think he was fine here.
Yeah, I think he definitely was someone who seemed to get along with people. And I think the fact that he was able to formulate new bonds with people when all of the people he had formulated bonds with kept leaving speaks to this, that he had to have been able to be likable and sociable and find connections in order to do that, because it wasn't like that was my only option and it's gone. He was able to develop relationships with other people too.
Canadians are like notoriously nice, right? I mean, we all just agree that like, do you know an unkind or unnice Canadian? But
That's amazing.
I never saw anything negative with Kane,
Yeah,
and,
no, he's very kind.
and honestly, like, I think he's hilarious, and I wish we had seen like more of his personality out there. But yeah, I definitely don't think that was an issue. I think he's genuinely like a nice, kind guy.
Yeah. All right, we can go to the 6th rule, which warns against being too much of a threat. And the amount this factored into Kane being targeted surprised me. Just sitting here, I was kind of on board with Carolyn, wondering, why is Kane a threat? Because he's sneaky? We're all sneaky, as she said. But then I had to remind myself that we're really only comparing him to a few people, Lauren and Jamie and somewhat Danny, because those were the only options considered by Tika. Now, again, we'll get to the Danny thing in a minute here. But among the RHAP, as Heidi said, Kane was the most strategic and a gamer and big, so he could do well in challenges, making him the biggest threat among those 3.
Right. Yeah, and this is something that we've talked about a lot, is that whatever makes you a threat is very individualized. And I think too that we also have Jam Jam to consider here, because Jam Jam is looking at Kane differently because he wrote his name down. And so that becomes a threat to Jam Jam. And then Jam Jam is able to try to instill in Carolyn that, no, listen, he's a threat to me, therefore he's a threat to us, and try to get her to understand that that's a component as well. And so this is where that threat level, I think, really depends a lot on who's on the receiving end of some of this, information and some of this. Because someone actually said it, when someone writes your name down, then that person, then suddenly you're going to start looking at that person a little bit differently because they decided to write your name down. So I think that certainly didn't bode well for him either.
So when I hear the word threat, pre-game and during the game, I break it up into like 3 categories, right? So you've got physical threat, a social threat, and a strategic threat. So when I kind of put in order based on each player, like what I think they rank as. So like if I'm looking at Kane, I'm like, okay, I think number 1, he's a strategic threat, and then I think he's a social threat, and I could be wrong here, but like I never saw him as a physical threat. Yes, but like I wasn't seeing anything that would lead me to believe that like people were threatened by him physically out there, and they were so worried about how he was going to perform in challenges, especially because individual challenges are being won by women right now. But we're not seeing it. So honestly, I think that people probably saw him as a strategic threat. And because things weren't going his way in the game in terms of strategy, we weren't able to see that, but everyone knew it out there. That's my take on it.
Yeah, he even told Mike Bloom, I think I was perceived as somebody who was trying to influence the game at that time, especially after the Brandon vote. This is what you were talking about before. I came back and was very much like, I don't want that to happen again. We need to figure out what's going on. So kind of like when his name was brought up at Mergatory, he might have acted in a way to draw more attention to himself.
Yeah.
As far as the physical threat thing, I mean, Heidi mentioned it. And then in a previous podcast, someone mentioned it, or in a previous episode, someone mentioned it. And Jessica and I kind of also, we're making fun of the idea. Like, no, he's the nerd. He's not the physical threat.
Right.
But I think what we don't get a sense of is what Heidi said. He's big. Now, I never get a sense of how tall people are unless you're like humongous and sitting next to the, standing next to the smallest person. So I never thought of Kane as big, but that's like the 2nd or 3rd time we've heard it. So I think he must be taller. He looks more muscular. And so there's still this idea, even though it hasn't borne out, for seasons, there's still this idea that the big guys are going to dominate post-merge challenges. And I think that's just ingrained in people's head. Plus, once you're already marked as the strategic threat, if you're also, somewhat physical, that's just one more thing to throw in.
Right.
Yeah, sure. Because a lot of the challenges too that they end up creating in the new era are strength. You have to be very strong. And right now we're not necessarily seeing that. I mean, they are very difficult challenges, but I can see that as being a concern for people as they move forward, just because of the types of challenges that they've created. Yeah.
Yeah. But I agree with you, Lindsay, that mostly the threat that he posed was strategic in nature.
Yeah, because I mean, when you're in challenges, you are sizing people up, especially in the beginning part of the game, because you want to see, like, you know, who is going to be a threat moving forward. I know for at least me, like, I was making sure I was keeping an eye on every single male and female, even in pregame. You know, you're right. But you know, by the time we're in this place in the game, you know who the physical threats are and who aren't, right?
Yeah.
And again, like, no disrespect to Kane, maybe I just didn't see it, but like, physical threat was like at the bottom for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the 7th rule covers idols and advantages and game mechanics. Kane left with an idol that wasn't his and wasn't an idol. But you know, he didn't know that last part until much later because everybody else in the jury thought it was real too. So he didn't disclose when he found it out. I'm presuming at some point, Matthew, you know, who of course was pre-jury, reached out to Jamie and was like, "Ooh, what happened with that idol I gave you?" And then she told him, and he was like, "Oh, I guess we better, you know, someone better tell Kane."
What an awful sensation to have for so long, right?
Yes.
Oh, gosh.
But, you know, no matter what, none of it was Kane's fault. In fact, he never had any true interaction with a real advantage or idol. He did try, which made for some amusing footage early in the season when he felt like he was in trouble. So he looked for an idol. So the others felt like he was becoming more of a problem. So he really needed an idol more, and so on. But as we discussed earlier, that was resolved by RHAP just, you know, winning immunity over and over again.
I will say that one interesting thing that came up in his exit interviews was when he found Brandon's fake idol, and then and he was asked, did he consider trying to utilize that, and he didn't. And I was like, and you could almost hear it as I read the words with him going, damn it, that's a good idea. I should have done that.
Yes. And so, actually, that's, you know, one of two things that I have in this rule for him that he should have done differently, which was that, so Mike Bloom had asked him if he thought about using it to bluff so he could survive, like, oh, I have an idol, or, you know, pretending to accidentally let them know. And you know, what he said was he was so focused on figuring out the vote, he had no patience for fake things or tomfoolery at that time.
I know, but you needed it at that time.
Yeah, but well, first, props to Kane for use of the word tomfoolery.
I know,
do not think it's used enough. And it's a really good way to describe all the trinkets, real and fake.
Sure, absolutely.
But that aside, you know, like you just said, he should have thought about that. And now, especially, now he had no way of knowing this, but Rob did a podcast a couple weeks ago discussing how the best use of a fake idol is for yourself.
Yeah.
But it would have added that element of chaos that he said he wanted. And whether we like it or not, tomfoolery is part of the game and needs to be considered.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think he's kicking himself for not creating some tomfoolery with that at that point.
Now, another way to add chaos was the second possibility I thought of. Instead of just re-hiding it where he found it, he could have done what Danny and Matthew did with their fake idols, planting it. He could have, you know, found the Brandon idol, planted it where he knew someone would look, and then leading a specific person there. Like, could you imagine if he had led Danny to it? Because Danny was going crazy looking for idols.
Right. Yeah.
If he would have led Danny to it, he could have had more control of the situation rather than just leaving it up to chance that someone might find it and you might never know.
What did he do with the idol?
He put it back where Brandon had hit it.
Okay. And nobody found it.
We don't know that anybody found it.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it's and it was a secret scene. So that tells me that probably nobody ever does find it.
Yeah. Right. Probably doesn't amount to much.
So, which is funny because of the way Danny was searching everywhere, but Danny was mostly searching trees, and it was in like a cubby hole of rocks.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So now that we've helped Kane kick himself a little bit with the fake idol stuff.
Sorry, Kane.
Yeah, we can move on to the long-awaited Appendix A. And
Yes.
it's about the tribe keeping their end goals in mind when voting. And, we talk about voting out the weak than the strong and the weak than the strong. And we're still at the point where it's common for people to vote out stronger threats, but it's complicated by the fact that the Tika 3 are still trying to hide their influence.
Right.
And so I think this vote was a combination of the two. And this is where we get into some of the stuff that we were talking about earlier, because Soka still obviously wanted a Ratu gone, although we know that Franny had other ideas. But she was hamstrung by the distrust that was still there. We mentioned earlier how Kane and Franny and Matt and Carson had talked about working together before the split vote. But then Ratu took out Matt, and then Soka blindsided Brandon. So there just wasn't a lot of trust in the air. And like we were talking about, it was bing, 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 for those votes. And so Heidi noted that after they just blindsided Brandon, Ratu was unlikely to work with her. And Kane said in his interviews that there was discussion spurred by Franny about targeting Tika before continuing the war, but Ratu couldn't trust Soka enough to do it. So it just reverted back to Tika playing the middle and essentially deciding the outcome.
Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, when they see Tika constantly playing the middle all the time, why is there not more just anger and resentment and
I don't know that,
right?
I don't
Even
know
if we work together for one vote, work together for one vote, just
Yeah.
to handicap them a little bit, right?
Yeah.
I don't know that they do see them playing the middle, because so far it has appeared that Tika has sided with Soka because they hid their votes that one time, when the idol was used. So they made it look that way. Now, the people on Soka should know what Tika is doing, and I think that's why Franny figured it out more.
Right.
Because Franny could look at it and see, oh, they voted for me even though they knew that those were going to be,
exactly, which is why Franny is like, hi,
yeah,
everyone. Those three over there are going to be in the final three.
But she had to convince Danny. And as we saw earlier, Danny has some very specific ideas about what is the right way to play the game. And, I was actually, going through that video again in preparation for a TikTok. And he is very adamant that, Franny is not doing it right and she's being illogical and that's not what you do. And come on, and
but I'm curious to see if like Franny pushed back a little bit more and we're just like missing those conversations. Like I find it very hard to believe that like Franny just kind of like glossed over it. Like Franny's incredibly intelligent. She's got, a hold on this game. It seems to me like she's hyper aware of what's going on. So I find it very hard to believe that she just brought it up and then Danny shut it down quickly. I'm surprised he like let that stand. Without he's trying different avenues or at least going to other people,
Right.
So,
I guarantee that you're right. That she continued to bring it up because Kane said he heard about it and in fact thought that Soka might be targeting a Tika.
Right.
And so clearly she brought it up at other times, and they just show us the one clip. I have my suspicion about why they showed us that one clip, which we'll get to when we talk about my prediction. I mean, it was the situation where, okay, now we know from that one clip, Franny brought it up. It was rejected mostly by Danny. So we know it's out there in the ether, but they still didn't go that way. So that left it still with Tika in the middle and leaving the question of who would be better for Tika to take out. We already discussed, we saw Carolyn wanted Danny gone, Jam wanted Kane. And, on the one hand, it seemed like Jam Jam wanted it for somewhat emotional reasons of he wrote my name down. Although, you mentioned someone writes your name down, that means you're on their mind.
He definitely is out for blood,
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
I can't believe he just keeps getting away with it and nobody's recognizing it.
Yeah.
Like, how is nobody like targeting Jam Jam right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I will say to his credit, he's playing a kind of like a similar type of game as Carolyn. It's just different because he's like that outgoing, lovable, like, everybody likes me, I'm funny, I can make jokes, and not acting like anything is really bothering him. But then he's like a confessional, like just amazing, wealth of information in his confessional. So I just think it's all about the way he's presenting himself. Like, oh, poor little Jam Jam, and everyone's coming after me. But
I just keep taking everybody out. Like, nobody has put the pieces together yet. Nobody has figured out that the last 4 people that have gone out, or is it 4? Hold on. I don't know what the order is.
Yeah.
But like, nobody, you mean to tell me nobody on that island has been like, every single person that's gone home has voted for Jam Jam?
Yeah. It's incredibly fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then meanwhile, Carolyn kind of wanted to vote emotionally too, because she's been sick of Danny since she met him, basically.
Yeah.
But I think she's right to target Danny. I'd be targeting Danny if I was out there.
Yeah. And I think, well, okay, here's the thing. I think they made the right decision for a few reasons. First, it delayed turning on Soka for 1 vote, so they could make Soka feel even more comfortable. So that's one thing. Second, Kane said in interviews that Jam Jam had strong relationships with Jamie and Lauren, so he could potentially pull them in fairly easily once Kane was gone to help turn on Soka next time. And, Kane even said that he thought that might be part of the reason he was the chosen target. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if Tika came to their decision, as I said earlier, by agreeing to get rid of Danny next, like getting Carolyn on board by saying, look, we take out Kane, we grab Lauren and Jamie, we flip, we take out Danny next.
Yeah.
Right. But okay, so let's say you're Tika and you're looking at Soka and you're looking at Ratu. Who's the more threatening tribe?
Soka.
Right.
Yeah.
Except they can't, people keep, and this is another part of Danny that, I was saying he was very adamant about, was the focus on advantages.
Yeah.
Oh, they have an idol and they have an extra vote. And it's like, I mean, Tika was able to get rid of both of those things. Now the idol was never real, but nobody knew that.
Right.
The extra vote, I've had a number of debates on Twitter about this by people who are like, oh, the extra vote has so much power. I'm like, no, it doesn't, especially when it's a known extra vote. She has it. You can plan around it. It's just the same as saying they have one more person on their tribe, except it's even easier because that one more person doesn't have new opinions, you know? And so it's just math at that point. It is not a big deal. And so, but people focus on those things. So they were able to eliminate those and get rid of Kane, and now they can flip on Soka. And the thing is about Soka is they have 2 people who are really good at challenges, and they can't both win immunity.
Right.
I mean, occasionally there's a twist where you can, but so I mean, Danny has come in second at least twice. And, Franny has been winning. So if that continues, I mean, kind of spoiler for my prediction here, but this is the way I think they're going.
I agree.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I'm surprised. I'm not surprised that Franny hasn't been targeted. And I hope she's not targeted because I love watching her play. It just brings me so much joy. I'm just surprised people haven't gone after Danny more than they have.
I think they're just waiting because he's in some ways he's like Jonathan. He's such an obvious target.
I think he's like Jesse. Not in, I mean, their games are different, yes, but like,
very different.
I kind of felt like I kept wondering why people weren't going out after Jesse or Carla. You know,
Yeah.
like how did people how did people let Justin and Carla get as far in the game? And I mean that and like with the utmost respect, but like how in the world did you guys let them get as far as they did in the game?
Mm-hmm.
I just, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right, we can move on to Appendix B, which up till now we haven't mentioned. It deals with the jury phase of the game. In theory, we should have, started mentioning it a couple weeks ago, but it really hasn't come into play. I thought of it while we were doing the podcast last week, and then I forgot. Literally while we were doing it, and then I managed to forget still while we were doing it. But
it happens.
yeah, I would. The thing is, it's not like it's been some sort of major impact. And I say the same is true here. Nobody voted out Kane because they specifically wanted him in the jury at this position or anything like that. But I at least wanted to, put it up there. It is on our radar. We are paying attention to it.
We definitely are. I promise you that.
Yes. So with all that said, it is about time to wrap things up. So Lindsay, what are your final thoughts?
I don't know. You guys give your final thoughts first. I've never done like a final thoughts before. I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about predictions. Like where am I supposed to go in this? Like,
you're just your conclusions about Kane.
Okay. I think the last couple of episodes have shown me a side of Kane that I wasn't able to see before. And the more I get to know them, the more I'm disappointed that he didn't stay in the game longer. But I also don't feel like from what we were shown that I was given enough of him to grow attached to him in the game. When I think about the people that I'm attached to the most in the game, we're looking at Franny, we're looking at Jam Jam, we're looking at Carolyn, we're looking at Carson, the people that have gotten a lot of airtime. I think if I had been given more airtime for Kane, I would have fallen in love with him as well. And while I'm sad to see him go, I'm not as sad as if like one of my favorite players would have gone. That's not to say that Kane couldn't have become a favorite player of mine. I just didn't get enough of him.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah.
Okay.
Final thoughts.
Jessica?
So, I mean, Matt was just such a great guy, right? And he was so... Oh, I mean, Kane. Yeah. What am I saying? It's not Matt. How silly of me.
Did you get a job on Survivor production? Is that?
Listen, I feel for Kane, really, because they messed up your name. Come on. I mean, that's just awful. And that had to have been a bit of a kick. I appreciate Rob for addressing him as Matt as well. So it was a funny moment. But I almost feel like it's a representation of his Survivor journey, right? Where I think, Lindsay, you really expressed it very well, where there was we didn't get to see the Kane that I think we were kind of expecting to see, right? His pre-game really kind of structured him as this, he's a law school student and he's Dungeons and Dragons, and he seems to be someone who's going to be very strategic, but he's also like, I almost want to say like he appeared a little aloof. Like you were like, I don't really know what we're going to get with Kane.
Yes.
Because there was so many avenues he could have fallen into, right? And so I was fascinated with him at the beginning because I really couldn't pinpoint where he was going to end up. And then Survivor couldn't even pinpoint his name. So I just feel like poor Kane kind of got a little bit shorted on his Survivor journey. And maybe that was because things just didn't work out for him. We've discussed this a lot. People come into this game and they have plans and they have ideas and they have things they want to do. And poor Kane kept trying to do those things. He would, here's Maddie. This Maddie's going to work with me. This is going to be great. And then Maddie leaves. And then, here's Matt. And I'm going to work with Matt. And then Matt's taken out of the game. And then here's Brandon. And I'm going to rebuild that relationship that I've got with him. And then Brandon's gone. And then here's Jamie. And she's got this fake idol, but I don't know it's fake. And I'm going to, and like all of these plans that just didn't go where he wanted them to go. And so I really do feel for him because I think we could have gotten so much more out of him, but it's just all of the planning that he was trying was overtaken by other people's plans and other people's ideas. And he really kind of found himself in the background having to work with people instead of being able to work people. And so it's just one of those situations that it's too bad for Kane that we didn't get to see all of the capabilities he had. But I do truly appreciate his passion, his quirkiness, and what he did bring to the game. So thank you, Kane, for all of that. And I'm really sorry they called you Matt. That's just terrible.
My favorite line of the entire episode was, what was it? He said, "Enjoy the rice, bitches." Right?
Yeah.
Those were his,
And I'm like, where was that Kane the entire season?
Right.
Like, and I know he was out there, right? But the edit just didn't show that. And so,
Yeah.
you know, we got that small glimpse, and there was a part of me when I heard that I was like, oh, maybe he was socially more of a threat than they showed. Because I'm telling you what, like, if I was playing with that Kane that said, "Enjoy the rice, bitches," like, I would have loved that person out there. But I also would have seen them as like a threat, because I'm like, he's super funny. You know, I think Kane's a lot funnier than we were able to see. And I think what I know about casting, just having gone through it for so long, is that Survivor casts the best of the best. Like, it's the best person.
Yeah.
And so I know that he had so much more to offer than like what we were able to see. And I'm crossing my fingers that he's going to be at the finale, and that I'm going to have a few minutes to be able to chit chat with him and get to know him as a person, because I think we lost out on a really great contestant. So yeah.
Well, Kane's final words were that everybody else was playing out there too, and he got outplayed. And that's something that doesn't happen in Dungeons and Dragons. As we discussed earlier, you play as a group, so either you succeed or sometimes you have bad luck or take on something you shouldn't, and your character gets killed in the game. In Survivor, sometimes you can scheme and plot and follow the other rules, but other people are working for themselves. They may do it better or faster, and your character gets killed off from the game. In this case, Kane knew what he needed to do, and he had plans for it. But other people had their plans too, and they saw what would happen if RHAP wasn't broken up. First it was Brandon, but then it was Kane's turn. Kane had a solid alliance in his own tribe and also reached out to others. Things could have been much different if the split tribal council didn't happen when it did, but you have to take things as they come on Survivor. He thought those outside alliances would help keep him safe, especially since Carson had told him previously when his name came up. But that time likely contributed to his undoing, because he showed more of his strategic abilities sooner than he planned. More importantly, though, he was planning to go to the end with two people he thought he could beat. The thing is, once others started looking at his alliance as targets, that meant they also saw him as a bigger threat than the other two. Perception works both ways.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean he was necessarily the biggest threat in the game, but he was near the top of the list among the possible choices for the Tika 3, because Soka and RHAP still couldn't trust each other. Each thought they were the heroes and the others were the monsters of the story. Part of that was due to their own actions. Part of it was how well the Tika Wizards have played the middle so far. Kane raised his sword and his own
here we go.
Just enough to draw attention, and he didn't think of several possibilities to use a fake magic item that he could have made things more chaotic like he wanted them. And that is why Kane lost.
The props are just taking over.
Golf clap. Golf clap. I'm here for it. Although, like, as a nurse, like, all I'm thinking is, like, thank God he's got headphones on, because he's about to like clip his ear, and I'm stressed. I'm stressed.
I will tell you.
Aggressive, right?
Okay, a little behind the scenes here. This is a throwing knife, no blade.
I was wondering about that. I'm like, how long have you had that? Yeah. What is its purpose?
What do you do with it?
How long have you been wondering, like, how you can come up with like a way to use it?
Yes.
Right.
Now this is my juggling dagger.
Wait, do we juggle daggers, David? Do we need to talk about this?
Well, we juggle one dagger. I'm not crazy.
Well, what do you juggle with the dagger?
Haven't you heard the story of me juggling a flaming tennis ball and almost burning down a building?
No,
No?
I have not.
I don't know. This podcast may be too long already.
Okay, so we're gonna put a pin in that too.
Can we talk about it the next time you guys invite me to come on and hang out with you guys? Okay. All right. But that means you cannot talk about it until the next time I come back.
Okay.
Is that a deal?
Okay.
Is that a deal?
Yes,
Okay.
that's a deal.
Okay.
All right. Well, before we get to our predictions, let me remind everyone that the rules we just discussed are available in poster form and T-shirt form and T-shirt list form. You can just go to robhasawebsite.com/yxlostfeed Yep, there we go. That's a better one. And click on any of those things to order them, and then purchase. Yes, click, buy, display, wear, whatever you want.
Everything, all of it. Hang it in your house,
now, Jessica,
wear it on your back.
You have a long sleeve version of it on, correct?
I do. They no longer make the long sleeve version, so this is like a special edition.
Much like they no longer make the mug.
Man, you guys have all the good stuff.
I know. Well, I do have another one here too. A funny little aside. So this is I just took out my earphones, my headphones. Did you see how late it is? Okay, so I have this other one, right? Which is also it's a long sleeve, and it's the list, which was great. So this was the original one that I had gotten, and then when the back of it was this.
What is that?
It was just a blob.
It was just a blob. And I was like, wait a second.
Now that was, let's be clear. That was the former printer, not the current one.
Yes. So they replaced it. But it was one of the, I was like, I'm confused.
Yes. So that, hopefully won't happen under the current printer, but may also be one reason that things were simplified to, not include long sleeves.
Maybe. But it was quite funny.
Yes.
Quite funny.
Yes. So I'm actually wearing the shirt that I'm wearing is just a David and Goliath shirt, actually. But
I love it.
They sent it to me originally in the wrong color also. And again, that was the previous printer. So I have two of these. So yes, but now we have the better printer. So order, and you should get what you want.
Yes.
So, and if you order the poster, there's only one of them. So, and
there's only one shipping department.
Yes, there's only one shipping department. So
I'll do my damnedest.
Yes. So Jessica, besides ordering, how can people contact us?
They should definitely look for us on Twitter. I'm at Jessica Lewis 89. You are at David Bloomberg. And Lindsay, what is your Twitter handle?
Look, I'm having to look it up because I knew you were going to ask me that. I am at Lindsay Carmine _.
Okay. So you should definitely check us all out because we like to live tweet. Yes, come say hi. We live tweet during the episodes, tweet during the week. Obviously, there was a lot of discussion about grilled peanut butter and jelly that was happening on Twitter that you might have missed out on. So this is why you should follow all of us. And now I will say this as well. David Bloomberg, as I say every week, he's a bit of an influencer. He has a lot of channels out there, a lot of places you can find him. So many places. He has an entire list on, what is it, David?
Linktree. And I just added, as you were talking, I switched my name on here. Of course, then I made it really small.
David.
So yes, you can go to Linktree/David Bloomberg, except there's a dot before the EE. And so you can see all of my different social media there, including, of course, all the video sites, which would be TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, where I post the various videos, and I am David Bloomberg TV on all three of those. But you can get to those and Twitter and everything else, and there's even links to get a poster and a t-shirt there too.
See,
so
many capabilities on your Linktree.
That's right. So there, see, you can see it now on my under my name too.
You finally did it.
I did it while you were talking.
I love that. I've been telling you should do that.
Yeah, You did.
David, I love your TikTok videos.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
This is what he needs.
I know you
and I will say
on those. I just
he
want you
definitely
to know
does.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, it's funny because sometimes I'll be like, oh, I'll throw this together and put it out there, and it'll get like thousands and thousands. And then there'll be another one that I work on for like 2 hours, and it gets like 400 views. And
I think
I'm
it's
like,
the algorithm. Like, do not take it personally. It's the algorithm. It's not working for you at that moment.
Yeah.
So,
like the one I did of the Three Stooges last week at the end of the week. I thought that was funny, and I picked specific Three Stooges clips that applied, and it got like 500 views. And
it's all about like timing too, like when you post, the time of day. I figured you know that, but like just in case you don't, like there's a system.
I know.
Listen,
and then
you're an influencer, Bloomberg.
Yeah.
Figure this out.
They do differently at different places. Like if I post at the same time on TikTok and YouTube, and sometimes TikTok will do really well and YouTube won't, or vice versa. It'll take off on YouTube and not on TikTok. So I think
I also wonder, like, if it mean, like, I wonder how much interaction you've had recently comes into play. Again, I haven't researched it enough. I honestly, I have no idea how many followers I have. I don't pay attention to any of that stuff. But the little that I do know, I know the algorithm just jacks everything up.
Oh,
so.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, all right. It is time for predictions.
Yes.
And so, I've kind of been hinting at mine through the whole podcast.
I think everybody knows at this point.
Well, I have to make it official. The preview makes it seem like all alliances are out the window, which is absolute BS, and we know it.
I agree.
However, if certain players outside of Tika believe this, then the Three Stooges can make use of it. We heard this week about how Carolyn wants Danny gone, and already discussed how I think there was probably a deal between her and Jam Jam to get rid of Kane and then flip back and go after Danny next. And we also heard from Kane that he thought Jamie and Lauren would be willing to work with Jam Jam and company. That would be great for them because, after all, swinging back and forth was the original plan, and now would be the perfect time to take out Ahsoka. So I'm going back to my prediction of a couple weeks ago. We saw Franny say that she recognized what Tika was doing by playing the middle and that they should target the threesome. But Danny poo-pooed the idea. I think the main reason that we saw that clip, and only that clip, of Danny shooting it down is as a setup because Tika is going to take him down. And this time, I'm even more certain than I was last time I predicted he would go.
Where's your sword?
Well, Danny isn't. Danny doesn't use the sword, but
I think that is a very accurate description of what is going to happen, because you do have to wonder why they chose those little small clips in regards to that. As soon as Franny said that, I was like, oh, this matters. This definitely matters, and it's just a setup for the fall of everyone. We're like, Franny saw it coming. And nobody listened, and then it's just going to be one after another, and Franny will be sitting on the jury going, I told you all this was going to happen. So I think it's definitely Danny.
While we think it's Danny, or Franny, I don't want Franny to go, but like I could understand why she might be the person to go. But even if it's Danny, like let's go a little bit deeper. Like, do we think that Heidi and Franny are eventually going to turn on Danny and maybe go over to Tika and vote with Tika to vote Danny out? Like, what do we think is going to happen here? What do we think Lauren and Jamie. What do you think Lauren and Jamie are going to do? Do we think it's going to be Lauren and Jamie and Tika versus Soka, or like I'm curious to see if like Franny and Danny like start butting heads and they turn on each other.
Yeah, I we don't like to get that detailed because we're lucky we get a prediction right. No. I'm just kidding.
Did I get in trouble here?
No. I do think Jamie and Lauren will join in with Tika, and that's the way it will go.
Okay.
And will Heidi see what's happening and also turn? Possibly, because we know that, Heidi seems to have better relationships with like Jam Jam and Carson. So it's possible she would be willing to flip against Danny also.
Well, the reason I bring it up is because like right now we've got Franny, Heidi, Danny are the only people that have been on the right side of the vote this entire game.
Mm-hmm.
And if that is going to be their angle at the end to say, like one of the selling points for why you should vote for me is because I've been on the right side of the vote and I've been in control of this entire game. Franny and Heidi want to continue with that streak. Are they going to turn on Danny knowing that Tika and Ratu are all voting for maybe Danny or maybe Heidi?
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, Franny and Heidi both seem very structured in the way that they play the game and very regimented. And Heidi went to great explanations regarding why she chose what she did when she was able to take someone's vote and the reason for it. And so I could see Heidi working through that permutation and going, okay, well, do I want to fight for Danny? I don't want to fight for Danny because I don't want to have to go up against Danny anymore. And Franny's going to say the same thing. Like, he's the only one who might be able to beat me in an immunity challenge because that's what it's come down to. So, let's get on that train as well. So I think that they will both kind of work through that, kind of see where things are headed, and then determine that Danny's not who they want to fight for.
They're not going to stay on a sinking ship, are you?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I don't know that they'll know it's a sinking ship. I mean, I don't think Tika is going to be as brazen as Brandon was and go around and tell everybody what's happening.
Right. And that's fair.
I think Tika will still pretend to be with Soka and say, let's go after Lauren or Jamie. And I think Franny will continue her push to target Tika. And I think there'll be a lot of running around, and we'll get those clips that we saw in the preview. And then there's also letters from home that's going to go into the mix also. And then I think it's just going to be, Tika and Ratu, and maybe Heidi or Franny will figure something out.
I don't know. I think they're smarter than that. I think they're smart enough to know that they're more of a target than the Ratu, and they're going to know that people are coming after them. And that's just my take. Again, I legit have no idea what happens, but that's just my take. That's what I would do. So
yeah. I mean, it's possible.
Fair.
It's possible. So I mean, the other thing that's possible is Danny wins immunity, which would be bad for Franny. So I just, like I said, looking at that clip, I mean, I know that some people read it the other way. Like, if Franny is the one, some people said on Twitter, if Franny is the one who identified Tika as the issue and then she gets voted out next week, we riot. And I'm like, well, it might not happen next week, but I think it's going to happen at some point. But I think with them specifically showing Danny being like, no, we don't need to do that. That's crazy talk.
Right.
I think he's the one that goes down.
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we fully wrap things up, I just want to, let me do this, and then we can talk about the one issue that you and I disagree about. Because
I was like, what are we doing?
There's still more. Yes. But wait, there's more. This is for the truly dedicated listeners here. So I just want to
2 hours and 7 minutes.
I know. I want to encourage people to check out the RHAP patron program at robhasawebsite.com/patron. And hey, guess what? We have a patron on the podcast with us. So
crazy.
I mean, so clearly, obviously there is a one-to-one cause and effect relationship. You became a patron because you'd been applying. Then you became a patron. Then you got on the show.
Did you see this?
I'll say this, though. The reason I became a patron was because y'all were so important to me and in the way that I studied the game that I thought to myself, like, I have to pay for this. Like, there's no way. I just couldn't. I mean, y'all are so valuable to me, like pregame and postgame, that there was no way that I couldn't give y'all some of my money every single month. And it just brings me so much joy. And I just thought to myself, like, for the amount that I listen, like, it can't be free. So there's
Aw.
nothing that makes me happier than giving my money to RHAP Patreon every month. So
Very nice. We
Yeah.
love
Well,
that.
thank you. And
Yes.
we discussed Cassidy, also a patron, James, patron, Owen, patron. Who knows about the rest? I don't know, but because a couple of that, like Cassidy and James, we didn't know. You and Owen were the active, on Facebook groups patrons.
Well,
Yeah.
the funny thing is that I lurked for so long because, like I said, I have been in the casting process since 2017, and I was so scared to even have my name out there. So for so long, I was a lurker. I never commented on anything. I didn't like anything. I wanted to.
I was a lurker.
I was. And now that you guys have interacted with me, I'm not a lurker. I'm a commenter. I love to comment on everything.
Right.
So
Yep.
I kind of felt like my hands were tied, but now that the game is done, I'm kind of opening up a little bit more online. So I'm having a lot of
She's
fun.
coming right in. She's not
I
lurking
am.
anymore. She's
I
in
am.
that door right
That's
in.
right.
Love it.
So other people can follow Lindsay's lead and support all the shows on the network by going to robhasawebsite.com/patron. And then, hopefully you'll get on the show too.
Yes.
So also, everyone should make sure you're subscribed to all of the reality TV RHAP Up podcasts by going to robhasawebsite.com/RHAP feed. Select your podcast service of choice. You not only get the RHAP, the RHAP Ups for Survivor, like the B&B, Stockwatch, Survivor International, us, but also podcasts on a number of other shows and topics covering the gamut. So there is all of that. Now, before wrapping up, we have the argument to settle. And Lindsay, just know, I'm
Lord,
armed.
it's bad.
I'm not scared of your
I
nice
wouldn't be scared
story.
either.
Let's get that straight right now.
Yeah, considering, you're behind a screen.
I will die on this hill. And
okay, so we should
this is good.
I am probably going to piss some people off here, including the person we're about to talk about. But
so this relates to Survivor 43, and there was a particular person on Lindsay's tribe who, after he blew a challenge, told us, I was throwing that challenge. I do believe that he threw that challenge.
I do
Lindsay
not believe he threw that challenge. I do not 100% do not believe that he threw that challenge. And I've talked ever since you and I have had this argument. I've talked with my castmates, and they're split 50-50. I'm not going to say
interesting.
Who. I'm not going to say who. I'll let them admit to it. But some people have said yes, he threw it, and some people have said absolutely 100% not. So just
fascinating.
You're the deciding vote.
See,
just kidding. I'm not putting that pressure on you. I already know the answer anyway, which is he did not purposely throw that challenge. So
no, that's not her answer. Come on.
No, it's I feel there's so much pressure right now.
I know.
Because I'm trying to remember. I know when we talked about it, and honestly, I feel like it was an excuse. He just did badly in the challenge, and then was like, "I did that on purpose." I mean, that's the way it appeared to me, because he is not the type of person that I think would throw a challenge.
Thank you.
Just because of who he is and how he presented himself. And so I really do feel like it was a moment where he could say, no, I meant to do that.
Yes.
First of all, good memory. I'm really impressed that you remember that. Go ahead. Sorry, David.
I will counter that of a couple things. He is also the type of person who thought that he was the strategic mastermind of the tribe.
Oh, for sure.
He could throw a challenge because what he believed was going to happen was going to happen.
No.
So that's the first thing. And second, we saw how good of an actor he was, which is not very. and so I think that given his other examples of acting, this was certainly many levels above that, which is another reason that I believe he was telling the truth at the time.
Okay.
So those are my reasons.
So remember how we talked about my levels of how did I
Threat,
explain?
strategic or
Said,
of threats.
right. Okay. So when we're talking about this specific person
Mhm.
as their threat level, right?
Mhm.
So it goes.
Are we not allowed to use his name? Is this like super secret?
No, we
Well,
can't.
obviously not at this
yeah.
point.
And let me just say, like, I love this person with all my heart. You know,
Oh,
it's
sure.
like we got along so well on the island, and we got along so well because we're the same person when it comes to like challenges and winning and physicality, and like
Mm-hmm.
we were each other's like go-to person when it came to like cutting things down, finding things on the island, going out and fishing. Like that was the way that we bonded out there. And honestly, like I think the reason that like I was so heartbroken out there was because I thought Ryan was going to be like my person. He relied on me on the island and in challenges, and he found me so valuable that when people came to me and told me that it was Ryan who had said like, "Hey, I think we're going to go vote for Lindsay tonight." I was like, "There's no way. Like I'm his girl out here, right?"
Yeah, right.
But I was his girl because he was the person that he could I was the person that he could rely on to like do well in the challenges and help him rebuild the shelter when it fell over in the middle of the night. And you know, anyway, he's too proud. He is too proud. Like he wants to win at all costs like me. And I just and I think the other thing is that like I don't think the way that he viewed the game, I don't think it would have even have occurred to him strategically ahead of time to throw a challenge.
Yeah. Well, and that's the
But
point.
he caught her in his web.
There's no web. There's no Ryan Webb.
But that's the point that like David, you're trying to make, that he thought he was a strategic mastermind, but we know that he wasn't good at strategy. So the mere fact that he would have thought all the way through to I'm going to throw this challenge so I can make this occur doesn't line up with his non-strategic mastermind.
Well, but he thought he was a strategic mastermind and was essentially in control of the tribe. And
see,
that
I don't see that. And maybe it's just because I was taken out too soon, but like I never talked strategy with Ryan on the island, like ever. Every time I tried to talk strategy with him, he was like, I don't think we need to talk strategy until it's time to talk strategy. Now, looking back, I know he was talking strategy with Gio and Carla, and they were all working together. So there's a part of me that was like, okay, maybe he was more strategic, but when you look at like Coco as a whole, and this is just my opinion, I think he was the least strategic out of anyone.
Well, I think we hypothesized this at the time, that he wouldn't talk to you because he didn't like lying. And so therefore it was easier to push you away than it was to lie to you.
Good memory. I'm impressed. I'm impressed you remember that.
And considering that he was, like I said, he was a bad actor. He was bad at lying. I don't know. To me, it looked like he truly believed it. Now, you know, did we get enough clips in real time to know? I don't know. Will we ever know the truth? No. You were out there. You had a better feel for him. Just watching him, though, I mean, neither look, let's be honest, neither look is good for him, because either he didn't want to admit that he had blown the challenge and therefore made it all up, or he thought he was a strategic mastermind and was in control of who was going to go and therefore was going to get rid of Cassidy. And so neither one is a good look for him. But, you know, so sorry, Ryan. But
no, and we love you, Ryan. I love you so much. I wasn't
going to say his name. I wasn't going to say his name.
I do not think he threw the challenge. Oh, I hope I don't get in trouble for that.
Only the true diehards will make it this far.
I know.
And I might tweet
Thank
about
y'all.
it. So I might tweet about it. So, you know.
We got to do this. It's, you know, 2 hours and 18 minutes in. Thank you, everyone, for lasting this long with us. It's always a little bit longer and a little bit more fun when we have a special guest on. So thank you, Lindsay, for joining us today. It was lovely having you here. I love that you have been listening to us for so long and enjoying it. And so thank you for the continued support and your willingness to put yourself in here and talk through all of this with us for over 2 hours. Thank you to Scott, Jill, and Derek for all of the editing that they do on not only the Why Blank Lost podcast, but all of the incredible content that you hear, that you see, that we talk about every week on RHAP. So thank you so much for all of the great work you do. Thank you to Chelsea for all of the posts that you create relative to all of the content, again, for RHAP that you see, that you hear, that we talk about every week. And thank you to Tricky for the artwork that is lovely and beautiful that you can see all around all of our videos here. And thank you to Will from America for the theme song that was created for Why Blank Lost. It's super catchy and it's a fun tune. So thank you for that. So David.
Yes.
So this is an interesting podcast because I agree with Lindsay. I don't think that you should ever eat peanut butter and pumpkin jelly ever, regardless of it being grilled or just on regular old bread. Not okay. That's just my opinion. I'm just going to say it. But anyway, thanks for all of that exciting discussion relative to that, because that was unexpected.
Yeah. Yes, it was
Unexpected.
I was not expecting to reveal that. So
I know, which was making it so much better because you were
It
like,
did make it better. It did make it better.
Not interested. Like, do I have to say what kind? Oh, yes. Now
Yes.
you definitely have to say what kind, because now I'm super intrigued.
yes.
And then
yes.
it was pumpkin. What is happening?
Whole
pumpkin?
new threads.
Oh, Lord.
And just
can't.
that, like, I'm not trying to call David out, but like, they're not selling pumpkin jam or jelly right now. Like, that's seasonal. That's
Yeah.
seasonal.
Trader Joe's sold it for longer than expected, but yes, I did stock up. I did stock up on Trader Joe's.
He stocked up, so apparently
I
this
stock
is
up too,
really
so
good.
I don't judge.
I think I have one more jar. Okay. Well, half a jar in the fridge and one more jar in the pantry.
Now listen, I love pumpkin pie. It's like one of my favorites. My mom
Pumpkin
makes
bread.
the best pumpkin pie.
Yes.
Pumpkin bread, pumpkin cake, all of that. Delicious. Mom, if you're listening, thank you for introducing me to all of the delicious things pumpkin, but not pumpkin jelly. Not once in my life has my mother ever said, Jessica, you should have pumpkin jelly.
See what you're missing?
Oh,
You don't even know what you're missing.
I can't
You
wrap my
don't
brain-
know what you're missing.
Oh, with peanut butter? How? What?
It's good.
David.
All right. Well,
Wait, no. One more
What?
thing. I know but like, I'm just saying, you like all the gross candy too.
yeah.
Ooh, does
We've
he?
established that he does. Candy
I will
corn.
judge you for that. Wait, what are we talking?
Candy corn. The circus peanuts.
Oh, circus peanuts? Really?
Peeps.
Yeah.
I love Peeps.
Peeps are fine.
Best s'mores ever. You do cinnamon graham crackers, Peeps, and a Reese's peanut butter cup.
Ooh.
Oh yeah,
Interesting.
you guys, it is a complete game changer.
It's very sugary though. Very sugary.
You only have to have one. You just have to have one.
James would probably tell us to put bacon on there.
All right. I'm sorry. I digress. So anyway, thank you for that.
Lindsay, thank you for joining us.
Oh, I
it
love
was
you guys. Thank
a lot
you
of
for
fun.
everything.
Got to learn all about your underwear.
Yes.
That's one way to end a segment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think my husband just walked by and he
Yeah.
heard
Oh,
you say
good.
that. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And
He's
he
gonna be
was like
like, "Oh,
upstairs
what?"
with my kids, like during that initial conversation. So guess what my pillow talk's going to be about tonight?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Jessica, thank you as always. It was great fun, as we could tell by the length of the podcast. And so I just want to close with one thought. Enjoy your rice, you bitches.
Yeah.
See you next week.